Good afternoon. Now, I'm the filler here before Mark Warner comes in. He is a really good speaker, so I know you're going to stay, but I'd like to make it a little interesting. What Deborah's asked me to talk about is a commission that she launched right after 9/11. Jerry Cohen, then the president of Carnegie Mellon, and I were honored to co-chair a commission that looked into resilience. What my topic today will be broader than just that. It will be resilience with a human touch. Resilience with a human touch. So our original charge of this commission was find the next black swan event before it happens. So organizations, be it states, be it cities, be it companies, be it the national government, could prepare for that. We had no trouble getting people to volunteer to be on this commission. It was obviously a time that was very important. And we got the longest list you can imagine. And even after we pruned the list, it was not practical to ask anyone to be prepared for all those options. To show how futile it was, we actually, launched our report in July of 2007. Nowhere on that list did we have anything about a financial crisis that started the next year. So we found it was absolutely not possible to try to predict what was going to happen in the future. So we focused on the resilience side. Excuse me a second. We focused on the resilience side of that, and we found companies that were fundamentally resilient could get through almost anything. We found that mean great information technology systems with excess capacity, proper backups, staff that not only knew what to do but knew why they were doing it. And taking a page out of Jim Clifton's book from Gallup, were highly engaged to start with. So they had that engagement could make a difference. The companies that ran their inventories at the right set point did not get a little greedy this quarter to put a little bit more in the EPS line. So when you put that in place, it's critical. Our recommendation, I think, still hardly holds. I don't think, even with all the technology today, we can predict the next event. I think you can use all the technology you've heard about this morning to help greatly in improving the resilience of your company. So that's what I would put the focus on. Now, human touch. We heard a lot about artificial intelligence this morning. And some would say it's a little bit of a war, artificial intelligence versus human intelligence. Let me be really clear, I'm on team human here. And I think after the Google AI program, about 2 years ago, beat the Chinese Go master, I think what we're seeing is this is not a race for raw intelligence, but the human piece of this, what's so important. So let me describe for you what I think is critical by this human touch point. So you're all imagining, well, what does that mean? I think the best way I can do it is take a technology story that's already been talked about this morning and try to relate to it from this. 50 years ago, indeed, Neil Armstrong, the first human to set foot on the moon, as we all know. And what did he say? One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. How many people have heard that before or could have quoted this morning? Most everybody. Who can remember what Buzz Aldrin said when he stepped out as the second person? Yeah, that's what I thought. By the way, he didn't say much. I think he said nice day or something like that. But he's my example of the human touch. If any of you have seen Buzz, I've had a chance to meet him. I certainly don't know him, but I've shaken his hand. He's not the touchy-feely type. Pretty doggone direct. But there were two examples of what he did on that mission that I think were absolutely mission critical. So when they were coming in the lunar lander, Neil was actually flying. Buzz was seeing, the technology just didn't exist. No digital displays. It was mechanical displays. This is really, and they were going in. As they were going in at 500 feet, and recognized the moon has 1/6 the Earth gravity. They'd never been able to test this before. They didn't really know how this rocket was going to survive and how you adjust it. Their first time was on the first landing. And so when they're coming in and they're in this big ravine, right where they plan to land. So, we're at 500 feet. We got to go a little bit farther. So obviously that was not debatable. You had to go farther, but they're running low on fuel. It's Buzz's job to alert the captain, Neil. And so he's sitting there knowing they're running very low on fuel, knowing he don't know exactly how much to pull on that throttle to get it down softly, and knowing he can't panic Neil, because you got to imagine what he was feeling at that point in time. So Buzz in a split second said, I have to say this in not my emotional voice, because Buzz could tend to have an emotional voice. I can't send the signal that we're in panic mode. He might overreact. And I have to think about exactly what to say. And in that very calm mode, Commander, we're at 100 feet and we have 30 seconds of fuel. And Neil got it down in 15 seconds. We kind of know the answer to the story, right? But that was the human touch that a non-touchy-feely person put out that I think was critical for the landing on the moon. And what I encourage you is in your organizations, demonstrate human touch. Think about it. You can do it a lot of different ways. The second time Buzz did it, they'd been out playing, running around, kind of having a good time, getting a little bit of exercise. Got back in. And as they were and Buzz was actually going to fly the module off the surface of the moon. He was getting worried not about them, he was worried about Houston. Because he reflected back when they were landing, and after they gave him the, okay, we're landed, everything's okay, what first came out of Houston control was, thank goodness, because everybody's turning blue. They haven't taken a breath in the last minute. So he was sending that signal, we're really uptight. It was kind of understandable, but they're really uptight. And Buzz was worried that them being uptight, they could have a problem. Because actually he and Neil were getting kind of relaxed. So he said, how do I send the word to Houston? And he had thought about this in advance. He thought this might actually happen. How do I send the word to them that's effective? So think about how you would do that. You could say, just lighten up, folks. Everything's going to be okay. His conclusion was that probably would just make them more uptight. So not the right thing to go. So he said, I think I'll tell a little joke. Now, I can't tell a big joke, or they'll think the oxygen's running low and, we got a different problem. I'll tell a little joke. So put this in perspective. These guys are all pilots. And so you think about when, your recent commercial flight, you're sitting there on the runway and the captain comes on and he says, we're number 2 for takeoff, we're number 3 for takeoff. Really bad day, we're number 23 for takeoff. I think you know the story. So Buzz was there and he had a script he was supposed to read. This is what I'm first thing I say before we take off. And Buzz says, Houston, I've looked around, seeing no other spaceships. We're number 1 for takeoff. That's exactly what happened in Houston. A little chuckle, not quite as much as in this room, but just enough to know, okay, we're okay up here. And that was the human touch, how he communicated. So I think the key message that we must have in this technology that all we've heard about this morning is moving so extremely fast, is we have got to bring in the human touch to be a part of that. From all we've seen, this is not about a training course. Because I think as humans, this is something we innately know. But as leaders, we have to say it's not only okay, but it's really necessary as we move forward. And I kid some about this artificial intelligence versus human intelligence. But I think we've heard this morning clearly that artificial intelligence could have more impact on us than the internet. There's no question it has that potential. But if we don't develop our humanity at the same rate, I don't think it will end well. I was in a session in Beijing just recently. The key topic was how do we slow down artificial intelligence? And a group of very respected people, a couple of them from this country, were saying we must slow it down or we're going to have a disaster. And I sat there and listened to that and I say, don't think that's possible. You're not going to slow this down. I think anybody that tries is going to come out the wrong end. What I do think is the balance is how do we be sure we have the human piece of that? And I think a lesson we've learned in this country from our very fast development, we did not think about the systems to develop people along the way so they had alternatives. Well, I think we heard that from the Education Secretary, a little bit of what Ted Cruz was talking about. We have to have the systems. And as I was growing up in Tennessee, I remember the big contracts, they forced them out. So a little rural area in Tennessee was making airplane wings. Not a very efficient place to make a wing, then have to take it to Seattle to actually put it on a plane. But it built a factory, it trained people, and then when that contractor was out, there was a factory there were trained people there, and somebody came in and took its place. I think we have to do the same sort of thing as we think about artificial intelligence. We have to think right now about what's the process to make sure people thrive through this, and the artificial intelligence makes a big difference. Now, I am a really pro artificial intelligence. Many days I have more voice-to-voice conversations with Alexa than I do my wife, and probably other people might have the same thing in here, but that's critical as we go forward. So in summing up, they've asked me to kind of fill in until Mark gets here. So I've run out of stuff, but we can have some Q&A here along the way, because he's supposed to be here in 2 minutes, but a lot of things going on down the road today. Is he here? 3 minutes. Okay, that's great. So things are busy about 1.5 miles down the road today, although his piece is not busy, but we'll come a little bit of slack. So we got time for a question. Question. Oh, you can do it. Question. Well, I think, if you couldn't hear, pre-competition collaboration is absolutely critical. I think that's been very important to this country. It's very important to our electronics industry developing. A lot of the work the council was originally set on was to allow that to happen, so it's very important. And I think there's a tendency not to do it, and perhaps the women in the room would be more likely to do it than the men. But I think that's a really critical thing that we must do. If I could go back more to the women part of your question. I in my spare time, I chair the board at Royal Dutch Shell, and we now have 45% women on the board. And we started out, when I started, we had 15% women on the board. It's a different place. It is a different place. And so it's because we're more productive. It's fantastic. And the way we did it was we opened our eyes to what would be the real talent we wanted. We raised the standard. The idea of lowering the standard, I wouldn't even want to talk about it. We raised the standard, but we looked at things we didn't have before. And one of the best stories, we have not got that same diversity in our senior management. So one of our women came in one day at the board meeting and turned across to our CEO and said, "Yeah, it sure is ugly on your side of the room," because there were no women. And the CEO immediately, he's a very astute guy, he explained, yes, look at all these things we're doing. He gave this nice, talk about what we're doing. It's good. And he's made tremendous progress. There are women on the other side of the room now. And then we come in 6 weeks later to the next meeting. This same board member says, "It sure is ugly on your side of the room." And he said, "But you said that last time." "Yes, and you haven't done anything about it yet." So I think that would be the message. I would say that we've got to move faster. We just can't keep making excuses. It must be longer and longer. And then I think we'll find a lot more things than just the idea of pre-competition collaboration as we go forward. And Mark is here. Thank you very much.